what is going on? Lego Man 123 are back with another video, and welcome back to another tier listing making video, where today in this episode I'll be ranking my favorite The Legend of Korra Season 1 Book 1 Air episodes. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off at episode 1, we have Welcome to Republic City, and the start of this episode was so perfect because we do get introduced to the new avatar, which is Avatar Korra, as like a young, sort of a child. She's probably like maybe 5 years old, and we can already see that she has pretty much mastered water, earth, and fire. And then it sort of cuts to her sort of training as a young adult, and I really did like that transition. And then after that, she basically has to go to Republic City. And then she travels to Air Temple Island to actually learn airbending, because Tenzin and his children are the only people left in the world of The Legend of Korra who can actually do airbending, because they are descendants of Aang, who was the last airbender in Avatar The Last Airbender. And then she does go to Republic City, and it was just so enjoyable to watch, because Republic City is such a beautiful place with a lot of buildings and people, and to actually see how excited Korra was definitely great to see. And she does get into some trouble, because she gets in trouble at a park, and then she kind of has a small sort of battle with like some gang members, and that was interesting to see how they sort of like judged her and said, oh, you're a girl, you're not going to do much. But then she was the Avatar, and they were definitely really shocked about that. And then we get introduced to Lin Beifong, who is Tough Beifong's daughter, and like she's like the chief of police in Republic City. And then we actually do get to see Tenzin and his children. That was definitely great to see. So for that, I'm going to put it in perfect, because I think this is such a... So for that, I'm going to put it in perfect, because I think this is such a perfect episode for The Legend of Korra. And then at episode 2, we have A Leaf in the Wind, and this was definitely an interesting episode, because we get to see those sort of techniques and the sort of a training you need to do to become an airbender. So I thought that was definitely interesting, but then Korra really doesn't get the hang of it, because she really doesn't have that sort of personality or those traits to actually become an airbender just yet. So that was interesting to actually learn about. So then she decides to actually visit the city, and she sees this pro-bending arena in search of inspiration, and that was definitely interesting, because I believe this is the first time we actually got introduced to Mako and Bolin, future people in the Team Avatar. So it was definitely interesting to see that, and just to see the sort of frustration and sort of pain Korra is in, because she can't actually do airbending at the moment. So I might put that in amazing. Next we have the Revelation, and this was definitely an interesting episode, because this is the first time we actually got to see the Equalist and like Amon and all that, because I believe Korra and Mako, they're sort of becoming like closer, and then Bolin is actually sort of doing stuff on the street to actually gain money, because Mako and Bolin actually live in the pro-bending arena sort of part up top in like the roof, because they really don't have a home, which we do learn about. And the only way for them to stay there is if they like pay rent and all that, so they have to buy money. But then I was about to say Mako, but Bolin, he actually does get sort of kidnapped by some gang members, and he's actually taken to a warehouse where he's going to lose his bending, but he doesn't actually know that. So then Korra and Mako actually have to attempt to infiltrate the base. That was definitely really sort of heart stopping, because like we're really not sure what is going to happen, because this is the first time we actually saw Amon do something this sort of powerful, and also the first time we actually saw Amon. So for that, I might put it in second position in amazing. Next we have The Voice in the Night, and this was definitely interesting, because Korra does get recruited to join the countermeasure of Tarlok's task force, which is actually to stop Amon and sort of Equalist, how like they train Equalist to actually become sort of chi blockers and all that. So that was definitely interesting. But the part I really enjoyed was actually seeing Asami for the first time, because her father, I believe, is the richest man in Republic City, and the person who's invented pretty much everything there, like the cars and all that type of stuff. So that was definitely enjoyable to watch. But the thing I found quite interesting was how she actually accidentally hit Mako, and then like they sort of fell in love the first time they actually saw one another. So that was interesting, but I really did ship him and Korra a lot more. But I thought this was interesting, because like Asami's father actually helped Mako Bolin and Korra in the pro bending as the firefighters because her dad actually did like pay them to actually go into the championships, I believe, or like the semi-finals. So I might maybe possibly put this episode maybe in third position in amazing. Next we have the spirit of competition, and this was definitely a really interesting episode because we actually get to see Bolin and Korra actually have this really nice relationship as really good friends because like they went on, I wouldn't necessarily say a date, but they just went out for a good night with one another, and I think they are perfect together because they really make each other laugh and they are just really enjoyable to watch with one another. But then at the end of like this sort of part there, as they get back to the pro bending arena, Marco and Korra actually share a kiss. It was a very quick one, but then Bolin got a little upset and like he had like flowers and I think he had chocolates ready for Korra, but like as he saw that happen, he got all upset, and that was the first time we actually saw the team struggle a bit because they worked really nicely together in the first couple of episodes, but then after this they sort of like split off and really struggled to work together, which I thought was definitely really interesting to watch that. So I might maybe possibly put this episode maybe in first position in amazing. At episode 6, we have And the Winner Is, and I really did enjoy this episode because we got to see more of pro bending, and I think it's such a great sport because I just love the whole competition between it, throwing elements at one another with like say earth, water, fire, the whole sort of idea about the different sections. I think it's definitely a really great idea. And this was when the Fire Ferrets were ready to actually fight in the Pro Bending Championships, but then an evil sort of threat looms over the arena, and I believe this is when we see these sort of champions, I think 3 years in a row. I think they're like something bat where they've won it like every time, so like people are definitely going for them to actually win this, and I thought it was definitely interesting how they were like these sort of champions of pretty much the whole game, like 3 years in a row. And I believe this was the episode where the sort of main person in the Bats team who's won it for like the whole time, like 3 years in a row, he actually did lose his bending, which was definitely interesting because this was the first time where Amon actually, I believe, spoke out into like the public and all that, like both non-benders and then also benders. So it was interesting to see that. So I might maybe possibly put this episode maybe in third position in amazing. Next we have the Aftermath, and this was definitely an interesting episode because the tension does mount with Korra as she begins to suspect that Asami's dad is up to no good because they all get invited to Asami's like mansion, which I believe is on top of like the hill where it basically overlooks all of Republic City. And I thought that was definitely really kind, but then things really don't seem as ordinary because like Asami's dad is acting all strange and all that with phone calls, and Korra really does suspect stuff, and I really did like this whole sort of mystery idea about it, but then we do learn the truth about Asami's dad, and he's actually creating like weapons, mechs, and all that type of stuff for Amon and the Equalist, and I thought it was definitely very interesting to actually see Asami's dad do this, and he definitely did have a pretty interesting reason as well because Asami's mother was actually killed by, I believe, firebenders, and I thought that was definitely a pretty sad moment to actually hear that, but then this sort of loss and sort of sadness which happened definitely did shape both of the characters, but I feel like it shaped Asami's dad a little more because he was driven by like anger and hatred for pretty much any sort of bender, which is like fire, water, air, and earth. So I think that was definitely interesting, and to actually see Asami's reaction was definitely great because I liked how she wasn't like, oh dad, I'll join you, or like, she just really had a grudge on him after she actually did learn the truth. I'm really glad she didn't just like forgive him straight away and say, oh, it's fine dad, I understand. I'm really glad they actually had this sort of grudge between both of the characters. So for that, I might maybe possibly put this maybe in first position in amazing because the battles with like the mechs and all that with like Tenzin, Korra, Lin were definitely really enjoyable. Then at episode 8, we have when extremes meet, and I thought this was such a great battle because in this episode there's a battle between Korra and Councilman Tarlok because with some things they really don't agree with one another, and that's what sort of sets them apart from characters, and that's what sort of triggers the battle. And I thought this battle was definitely really enjoyable because they're both really skilled waterbenders, but Tarlok does have that upper hand because we do learn that he is a bloodbender, which was definitely really shocking to actually know that because he just seems like a really, I wouldn't say nice guy, but he seems like a guy who wouldn't really do blood bending and like someone who really has like a past you really don't know until you actually until he actually explains it to you. So I thought that was definitely interesting. And then the Equalists, I believe they begin to like rise up in Republic City and sort of take it for their own. So that was definitely interesting. And Tarlok does take Korra, I believe, to like an no, not an underground, like his house in like the basement on top of like a snowy hill, but it may not be his house, maybe like some sort of cabin. So for that, I might maybe possibly put this episode maybe in third position because that battle was definitely really enjoyable. Next, we have Out of the Past, and this was so great to see Avatar Aang again because while Korra's actually locked up in this sort of, I wouldn't say cell, but sort of like cabinet, which is, I believe, you can't metal bend it or pretty much bend it at all. So it's like a substance what you can't do bending in. So I thought it was interesting to note. But then the vision Korra does have was so awesome to see. We get to see Avatar Aang again, we get to see Sokka, we get to see Toph, really nice, and we also get to learn about a character who, I forgot his name, but he's like this sort of really big sort of gangster and sort of really big person in Republic City who is a bad guy. So I thought that was interesting, and like the whole sort of bloodbending thing where Aang took his like powers away by energy bending. So that was definitely a lot in that vision, but I really wish we just got more of those visions even before that because it would have been so awesome to see more of Aang, even maybe like a younger version of Katara. I think that would have been really cool, but we really needed more Sokka because like I think he said like maybe a sentence or something and that was about it. So for that I might maybe possibly put it maybe in second, or maybe last position, because if we got just more visions of them in like previous episodes or even future episodes, I think would have been really cool. Next we have Turning the Tides, and this was definitely a pretty epic episode because the Equals begin to attack Republic City, and I believe they actually then go for, as they're attacking Republic City, for Air Temple Island where Tenzin, his children, Pamara, and it was definitely really exciting, but also pretty shocking because, like, as this was all happening, what Republic City being attacked, Air Temple Island, Pema decides to have a baby at this point, and it's pretty funny how that actually did happen, like the sort of coincidence, but it's also pretty sort of heart racing because, like, are they gonna get out in time? Are they all gonna be rescued? Can she have this baby? So it was definitely really enjoyable. And then, like, as they sort of fly away, Lynn actually sacrifices herself and sort of like, I wouldn't say like shoots herself, but she sort of like takes the wind and like uses it to actually sort of float back onto the airships where Amon and Asami's dad is, and she actually does lose her airbending, her earth and metal bending at the end of that scene, and that was definitely really shocking to actually see that. But I'm pretty like shocked to actually see that she would sacrifice herself for Tenzin, his children, and then Pamela. But I'm really glad she actually did make that sort of a sacrifice because they are the last airbenders, and whatever happens to them, it's gonna be really sad to see that. So this was definitely a brave sacrifice by her. So I might maybe possibly put this episode in third position in amazing. Then we have Skeletons in the Closet at episode 11. And wow, this was one backstory. The backstory about Tarlok and then Amon, who was actually Noatok. It was such a dramatic story, but also really sad. And I thought it was definitely a pretty enjoyable story, but a lot of darkness was definitely in this because Amon, who was actually Noatok when he was like a teenager and a young child, and Tarlok, they were actually really close brothers, but as their father was he was actually the gangster, or like the sort of member in Republic City who actually did lose his like blood bending, and also I believe he had water bending, but I'm not 100% sure, from Avatar Aang. So then he actually disguises himself as someone new and actually goes to, I believe, the Southern Water Tribe, and he has 2 children with a girl he does meet, and he begins to train them to do water bending. But then as they get to that sort of age of blood bending, he's like a really strict father. He's actually a pretty mean and like a really jerk of a father to them. He basically asks them to bloodbend one another. So definitely a really dark and sort of very upsetting sort of backstory for Noatak and Tarlok. But I thought it was definitely a pretty perfect episode because like the whole backstory was something else. Then the final episode is Endgame, and wow, this is another perfect episode. The battle between Korra, Marco versus Amon was definitely really enjoyable in like the sort of pro bending arena, the sort of heart racing parts when like they run away from Amon because they know he can actually blood bend, so like he can sort of do the sort of twisting of the bones and all that and like the blood. So definitely really spooky there, and like the sound of it. And then like the whole sort of end part was definitely interesting because like as Amon gets shot out of the window by Korra, because she does learn airbending, which was definitely really shocking because at that moment we're like, well, how's Korra gonna beat Amon? She has like no elemental power, but then she sort of then does airbending as Amon's about to, I believe, bloodbend Marco again, but she does do it. But then as she's about to do it again, Amon does bloodbend her, and then she resists it, and then like kicks him out the window. That was such an awesome scene to watch. And then like everyone's like, wow, how could they do that to Amon? And like the Avatar's bad, but then like as Amon's in the water and like I wouldn't say drowning, but like sort of choking from the water. Yeah, I think you could say drowning. He sort of spurts up and he then shows everyone that he's actually a waterbender, and like everyone's like, wait, he lied to us and all that. And like his scar on his face disappears. So a lot did happen in this episode, and I might possibly put it in maybe first position in perfect. And then after that, basically, they all go back to, I believe, the Southern Water Tribe, where Korra still hasn't got her elemental powers back of fire, water, and earth, because Amon did take them away. But she did gain air after Amon took her bending away, so then she didn't actually lose that one, which I thought was definitely interesting, but also pretty shocking. And then as she's, like, sitting there, like, on this sort of ledge, like, away from the village, she's crying, and then, like, Avatar Aang comes up to her, and that was such an awesome scene to watch. And then, like, she does say, he does say, when we're at its lowest point, oh, I cannot remember it, but he says something really, just really sort of inspirational, and I thought it was definitely great. And then he does sort of somehow spirit bend, because he's not actually alive, he's a sort of a spirit in Avatar Korra, and then he sort of energy bends her by touching her forehead, and she does get her elemental powers back. And it was such an awesome scene to actually see her get her elemental powers back, and this was the first time we saw her go into the Avatar state, which was definitely really awesome because she was controlling all 4 elements at once. And then the end part for this episode was that Korra actually gave Lin Beifong her elemental powers of metal bending and earth bending, and it was so awesome to see how she actually did that by using a very advanced technique of energy bending, which was, I believe, the exact same as Avatar Aang did to her to actually give back her elemental powers, and to see the reactions of Tenzin, Katara, Tenzin and Pema's children was definitely really awesome. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video as much as I did making it, because as always with these types of videos, I really do enjoy sharing my thoughts and opinions. I would definitely love to hear what your favorite The Legend of Korra episodes are, and definitely stay tuned for seasons 2, 3, and 4 episodes, because I'm definitely really excited to do them. So as always guys, hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I can see you soon. Goodbye!